The vast emptiness of space surrounded Captain Orion Locke as he piloted his small cargo ship through the outer rim of the Galactic Confederation. A seasoned traveler and former soldier, Orion had long since left the chaos of military life behind, preferring the quiet solitude of space over the politics of the galaxy. But his peaceful journey was about to take a drastic turn. Orion's scanners lit up with an emergency distress signal. It was faint, almost on the edge of detectability, but it was there, a cry for help. Against his better judgment, he altered course toward the signal. As he neared, the outline of a small, battered ship appeared on his view screen. It was an older model, clearly worn down from overuse and riddled with damage. "This doesn't look good," Orion muttered to himself as he brought his ship closer. He hailed the vessel, but there was no response. Locking onto its coordinates, he initiated a docking procedure, quickly suiting up to board the vessel. As the airlock sealed and the door hissed open, a strange, eerie silence filled the air. The ship seemed abandoned at first, the lights flickering intermittently, the systems barely holding together. But a soft sound, a cry, echoed from deeper within. Orion followed the noise until he stumbled upon a small compartment. There, sitting in the corner, was a woman and a child. The woman's ethereal beauty immediately caught his attention: long flowing hair, glowing pale blue skin, and eyes that shone like stars. She clutched her child tightly to her chest, both of them looking exhausted and frightened. "Who are you?" Orion asked cautiously, though his voice softened at the sight of the child, who looked no older than 5 or 6. The woman's gaze lifted to meet his. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "help us." Without hesitation, Orion approached, kneeling down to inspect them. The woman was clearly an alien, but not just any alien. Her clothes, though torn and dirty, bore the insignia of royalty, an alien princess, most likely. The child, who was trembling, resembled her mother but with softer, more human-like features. "I'm Captain Orion Locke," he said, gently. "I received your distress signal. Who are you?" "I am Princess Viola," the woman replied, her voice gaining strength as she clutched her daughter protectively. "And this is my daughter, Leah. We've been on the run. Hunted. Please. We have nowhere else to go." The gravity of the situation settled in as Orion realized just how dangerous this was. An alien princess on the run with her daughter was bound to be involved in something far more complex than he wanted to deal with. Still, the fear in Viola's eyes stirred something inside him. "Why are you being hunted?" he asked. Viola took a deep breath. I betrayed my people. My marriage to a ruthless tyrant was arranged to solidify an alliance, but I couldn't allow him to raise my daughter. I escaped with her, but now his forces are tracking us down. They won't stop until they find us." Orion's mind raced. He had heard of such alliances before, forced marriages between powerful alien houses, often resulting in cruelty and exploitation. He couldn't leave them like this, but taking them in would put him in grave danger. "I can take you somewhere safe, but I need to know what I'm getting into," Orion said, his voice steady. Viola looked at him with desperation in her eyes. "I will do anything you ask. Anything. Just protect my daughter. Take me as your concubine, if it comes to that. I will serve you, but please, save her." Orion was taken aback by the offer, but the urgency in her voice made it clear that this wasn't a casual proposition. She was willing to do whatever it took to save her daughter, even if it meant sacrificing her own freedom. "Let's get you two out of here first," Orion replied, standing up and offering his hand. "We'll figure out the rest later." As they made their way back to his ship, the weight of what he had just agreed to settled in his mind. A runaway alien princess and her child, on the run from a tyrant who wouldn't stop until he had them back. And now, somehow, Orion was in the middle of it all. Chapter 2. The chase begins. Back aboard his ship, Orion guided Viola and her daughter, Leah, into the small, dimly lit living quarters of the SS Vanguard. The air inside was thick with tension as Viola's weary eyes scanned the humble surroundings. The child clung tightly to her mother, her tiny hands gripping Viola's robes as though letting go would allow the dangers outside to swoop in and take them. The quarters were modest, barely enough space for a few personal belongings and a small cot, but after what they had endured, it felt like a sanctuary. "You can rest here," Orion said, gesturing toward the cot with a nod. "We're heading to a neutral zone. You'll be safe there for a while, but you should get some sleep while you can." Viola, exhausted and on edge, gave a faint nod of gratitude. She gently guided Lia onto the cot, the child's pale blue skin almost translucent in the low light. The little girl's large, doe-like eyes looked up at Orion with a mix of curiosity and fear, her small body trembling with the weight of her recent ordeal. Viola laid down beside her daughter, running her fingers through the child's silken hair, trying to calm her. "Thank you," Viola whispered, her voice barely audible, though heavy with emotion. Her earlier offer still hung in the air like an unspoken burden. She had offered herself body, soul, and freedom in exchange for safety for her daughter. She had laid everything at Orion's feet, and yet, all he could think about was how deep this would take him into the crosshairs of an intergalactic feud. As he left them to rest, Orion made his way back to the cockpit, though his mind was clouded with concern. Taking in a runaway princess and her child one from a powerful royal house was no small matter. It wasn't just a rescue mission. It was an act of defiance against one of the galaxy's most dangerous warlords. Even with his military experience, he couldn't ignore the gravity of the situation. He had been flying under the radar for years, content with his cargo runs and occasional solo missions. Now, suddenly, he was embroiled in something far bigger than himself. Seated in the cockpit, Orion tapped a few commands into the console, bringing the ship's scanners online. His gut told him that trouble would follow them, but he needed to confirm it. The radar began its slow sweep of the surrounding space, the lines drawing in closer with each pass. For a brief moment, everything seemed clear. No ships in range, no immediate threats on the horizon. But then, a blip appeared on the edge of the screen. It started as just a faint signal, barely noticeable, but Orion's well-trained eyes recognized the telltale signs of a warship. His stomach sank. He watched as the signal grew stronger, moving toward their position with alarming speed. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath, his fingers quickly working the controls to get a more detailed readout. The ship's identification code popped up on his screen. An Imperial war vessel, one of the Tyrant King's finest. Orion swiveled in his chair, pulling up the ship's defense protocols. He'd installed a few modifications since leaving the military, but nothing that could stand against an Imperial warship. The SS Vanguard was fast, and it was sturdy, but in a direct firefight, it wouldn't last long. The intercom crackled to life as the enemy ship hailed him. With a grimace, Orion opened the comm channel. "This is Captain Orion Locke of the SS Vanguard. Identify yourself," he demanded, though he already knew the answer. A deep, metallic voice responded, cold and unfeeling. "Captain Locke, you are harboring a fugitive of the Galactic Empire. Surrender Princess Viola and her child immediately, and your life will be spared. You have no chance of escape." The threat hung in the air, palpable in its certainty. Orion tightened his grip on the control stick, his jaw clenching as he glanced toward the living quarters where Viola and Lia rested. He had dealt with bullies like this before, and he knew that surrender was never the safe option they made it out to be. "Sorry, but I don't plan on handing them over," Orion replied, his voice steady despite the tension. "They're under my protection now." "You are a fool, Captain," the voice replied, devoid of any emotion. "You cannot comprehend the power you oppose. The Imperial fleet will crush you like an insect. We will take the princess and her child by force, and you will die for your insolence." The connection cut abruptly, leaving Orion alone with the weight of the words. He inhaled deeply, his mind racing. There was no reasoning with them. They wanted Viola and Lia, and they would stop at nothing to take them. If he wanted to survive, he needed to act quickly. He hit a series of buttons on the control panel, activating the ship's defensive systems. The shields hummed to life, casting a faint glow over the hull. But Orion knew the shields wouldn't last long against an Imperial warship. He had to think bigger. Pulling up the navigation charts, Orion scanned the nearby systems for any hope of refuge. His eyes settled on a cluster of dense asteroids just a few light-years away. It was a long shot, but the asteroid field might provide the cover he needed to evade the Imperial ship. It would be risky one wrong move, and they could be smashed to pieces, but it was better than standing still and waiting to be blown apart. As he plotted a course toward the asteroid field, the proximity alarms blared. The warship had locked onto their position and was closing in fast. Orion felt the cold grip of fear tighten in his chest, but he shoved it aside. He had survived worse odds before. Grabbing the ship's controls, Orion accelerated to full speed, the engines roaring as the SS Vanguard shot forward. The Imperial warship gave chase, its massive bulk looming like a predator in the darkness of space. The first barrage of energy blasts erupted from its cannons, bright bolts of plasma streaking through the vacuum. Orion swerved hard to the right, narrowly dodging the incoming fire. "Hold on," he muttered to himself, his hands moving with practiced precision over the controls. The ship lurched as another volley of plasma bolts exploded nearby, sending shockwaves through the hull. Inside the living quarters, Viola held Leah close as the ship rocked violently. The little girl whimpered, burying her face in her mother's side. Viola's heart raced, but she remained outwardly calm for her daughter's sake. Orion pushed the ship harder, weaving through space as the warship continued its relentless assault. He could see the asteroid field looming ahead, massive rocks tumbling through space, their irregular shapes casting long shadows across the stars. It was a dangerous labyrinth of stone and metal, but it was his only hope. As they neared the field, the warship continued its pursuit, sending out smaller fighter craft to harry them. The nimble fighters darted in and out, peppering the SS Vanguard with laser fire. Orion cursed under his breath, knowing he couldn't shake them all. He fired back, but his ship's weapons were no match for the sheer firepower of the Imperial fighters. A blast rocked the ship, sparks flying from the console as one of the lasers connected with the hull. The shields held, but they wouldn't last much longer. Come on, Orion muttered, his eyes fixed on the asteroid field. With a final push, the SS Vanguard shot into the asteroid field, narrowly avoiding a massive chunk of rock that drifted into their path. The Imperial fighters followed, but the field was treacherous. Rocks tumbled in all directions, creating a chaotic maze that even the best pilots would struggle to navigate. Orion maneuvered the ship with precision, dodging between the asteroids as the fighters struggled to keep up. One fighter clipped a rock, spinning out of control before slamming into an asteroid and exploding in a bright flash of fire and debris. The warship, too large to follow closely, pulled back, firing sporadic blasts into the field. But with the asteroids constantly shifting, it was difficult to get a clear shot. Orion took advantage of the chaos, pushing the SS Vanguard deeper into the field, where the rocks were densest. Inside the cockpit, the tension was thick. Orion's hands were steady, but his mind raced with calculations. He needed a plan, and fast. The warship wouldn't give up easily, and if they escaped the asteroid field, it would only be a matter of time before the Empire sent more ships after them. "We've bought ourselves some time," he muttered, his eyes scanning the sensors for any sign of pursuit. For the moment, it seemed they had lost the warship, but he knew it wouldn't last. Orion leaned back in his chair, his thoughts turning to Viola and Leah. This wasn't just a simple escape. The Empire wanted them badly enough to send an entire warship after them, and he doubted they would stop with just one ship. Whatever Viola had done to anger the tyrant king, it had put them all in grave danger. But now that they were on his ship, there was no turning back. Chapter 3: Whispers and Consequences. The days following Nathan's unexpected dinner with Kothara were anything but quiet. Whispers spread like wildfire across the academy, carried by students from all corners of the galaxy. It was as if the entire academy had collectively held its breath, waiting for the fallout of this most unlikely pairing. "Did you hear? The human actually took Kothara out for dinner. I heard she didn't even reject him. What does that mean? Maybe it's a Thranis thing? Maybe they don't actually see humans as unworthy?" The rumors varied wildly, but one thing was clear. Everyone was talking about Nathan Cade. He became an odd mix of legend and curiosity, and though he was used to blending in, the attention now followed him everywhere he went. Nathan tried to keep his head down. After all, it had only been one meal. Sure, he enjoyed Kothara's company, but he wasn't under any illusions about how different they were. Still, the academy wasn't going to let this go. As Nathan walked through the halls, he noticed the stares, the sideways glances. Some of his classmates gave him nods of approval, while others smirked in disbelief. There were even whispers in the dining halls that Kothara herself had been seen inquiring about human culture and traditions, something that hadn't been heard of before. Nathan was sitting in one of the academy's shared lounges a few days later, going over his notes for an upcoming engineering exam, when Mark and Rachel approached him with mischievous grins. "So," Mark began, plopping down beside Nathan, "you've officially become a legend. The human who dared ask out Kothara. You know, I'm starting to think you might be the bravest person here." Rachel laughed, taking a seat on the arm of the sofa. "Or the craziest. People are still waiting for her to turn you down in some dramatic Thranis ritual. Nathan rolled his eyes but couldn't help but grin. Guys, it's not that big of a deal. It was one dinner. She was just being polite. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Polite? Since when do Thranis do anything just to be polite? Mark chimed in, his grin widening. Yeah, they're not exactly known for their hospitality. And, word is, you've got the entire warrior class wondering what you did to impress her. Nathan shook his head. I didn't do anything special. I just asked her to dinner. I guess she was curious, that's all. Rachel crossed her arms. Well, whatever you did, you've certainly got the academy buzzing. Nathan sighed, knowing they wouldn't drop the subject. Look, I'm just trying to survive my classes here. Whatever happens with Kathara, I'll figure it out as I go. But Nathan wasn't the only one feeling the weight of the academy's attention. Kathara, too, had found herself at the center of an unexpected storm. In Thranis culture, interactions with other species were often formal and strictly professional. The idea of forming any personal connection with a non-Thranis, let alone a human, was practically unheard of. And yet, Kathara had accepted Nathan's invitation. She hadn't thought much of it at the time, it was a simple meal. But now, she could feel the eyes of her peers watching her more closely than ever. Her Thranis classmates, in particular, had become unusually distant. She had always been respected, admired even, but now there was a subtle shift. Conversations became stilted, and there were moments when her fellow students would exchange glances when she entered the room. One evening, while Kathara was studying in the academy's library, a group of Thranis warriors approached her. They were fellow students, but their presence carried an air of confrontation. Their leader, a tall and imposing Thranis named Karel, stepped forward, his arms crossed. Kathara, Karel began, his tone laced with disapproval. There are concerns. Kathara raised her eyes from her datapad and met his gaze coolly. Concerns? About what? Karel's eyes narrowed. About your recent associations, specifically with the human. Kathara kept her expression neutral, though a flicker of irritation sparked within her. Nathan Cade is a fellow student. Our interaction was academic. Karel's lip curled slightly. Academic? Word has spread, Kathara. The academy is abuzz with tales of your shared meal. The Thranis cannot afford to be seen associating too closely with weaker species. Kathara's eyes flashed with anger, though her tone remained calm. Nathan is not weak. He is unconventional, yes, but I find that refreshing. Karel scoffed. You are above such dalliances. Our people have always upheld a standard of excellence, and humans dash. Kathara stood abruptly, her posture rigid with authority. Enough. I will decide who is worthy of my company, not you, Karel. There was a tense silence as Karel and his group exchanged uneasy glances. Kathara's reputation carried weight, even among her own people. Though Karel seemed ready to argue further, he ultimately relented, giving a stiff nod before turning away. As they left, Kathara felt the tension drain from her shoulders. She hadn't realized how much pressure had been building around her ever since that fateful meal with Nathan. But now, more than ever, she was determined to forge her own path. Meanwhile, Nathan was oblivious to the political undercurrents his actions had stirred. The next day, as he made his way through the academy's corridors, he found himself cornered by a group of students he didn't recognize. They weren't Thranis, but they carried themselves with the same kind of arrogance. The tallest among them, a reptilian alien with sharp teeth and scales glistening under the corridor lights, stepped forward, blocking Nathan's path. So, you're the human who thinks he's worthy of Kathara, huh? The alien sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. Nathan blinked, taken aback. Worthy? I just asked her to dinner. What's your problem? The alien laughed, a harsh, grating sound. You don't get it, do you? Kathara isn't someone you can just ask out. She's out of your league, human. You don't belong in the same space as her. Nathan's jaw clenched. Who are you to decide that? The reptilian alien leaned in closer, his sharp teeth flashing. Someone who knows their place in the galaxy. You, on the other hand, are just a little earthling who's gotten too bold for his own good. Nathan's fists tightened, but he kept his cool. I think that's for Kathara to decide, not you. Before the situation could escalate, a familiar voice cut through the tension. That's enough. Kathara appeared at the end of the corridor, her violet eyes sharp and commanding. The reptilian alien stiffened, clearly intimidated by her presence. Without another word, he stepped back and slithered away, his cronies following in tow. Kathara approached Nathan, her expression unreadable. "Are you all right?" Nathan exhaled, nodding. "Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks." Kathara's eyes softened, just for a moment. "It seems my association with you has caused some unrest." Nathan scratched the back of his neck awkwardly. "Yeah, I've noticed. I didn't mean to stir up trouble." Kathara tilted her head slightly, her gaze fixed on him. "You didn't. They simply fail to understand what I see." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" Kathara's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "That humans are far more interesting than I initially thought." Chapter 4. Breaking Barriers. In the weeks that followed, Nathan and Kathara's relationship continued to evolve, much to the shock of the Academy. They shared more meals, studied together in the vast libraries of Soar Prime, and engaged in debates that covered everything from interstellar politics to the ethics of artificial intelligence. As the tension around them grew, so too did their understanding of each other. Despite the mounting pressure from her peers, Kathara found herself drawn to Nathan's straightforward nature. Humans had a unique quality that her own kind lacked: a willingness to challenge the unknown without fear of failure or rejection. With Nathan, she didn't have to maintain the perfect Thranis facade. She could just be herself. However, not everyone was pleased with this growing friendship. The Academy, an institution built on cooperation between species, suddenly found itself teetering on the edge of an ideological battle. The Thranis students, in particular, had become increasingly vocal about what they saw as Kathara's betrayal of her people's values. One evening, as the Academy prepared for its annual interspecies diplomacy gala, Nathan found himself standing in front of the dormitory mirror, adjusting the formal attire he had rented for the event. It was a far cry from his usual casual clothes, and he felt awkward in the stiff, high-collared suit. "Why am I doing this again?" he muttered to himself as he fiddled with the buttons. "You look ridiculous," Rachel teased from the doorway, leaning against the frame with a grin. She had stopped by to check on him before heading to the gala herself. Nathan groaned. "Yeah, I feel ridiculous. Why did I agree to go to this thing?" Rachel's grin widened. "Oh, I don't know. Maybe because a certain Thranis beauty asked you to be her guest?" Nathan flushed. "It's not like that. We're just friends." Rachel cut him off with a laugh. "Nathan, I've seen the way you look at her, and more importantly, the way she looks at you. I don't think it's just friends anymore." Nathan's blush deepened, but before he could respond, his datapad beeped. It was a message from Kathara. "Meet me outside the Grand Hall at dusk. I have something to discuss with you." Nathan's heart skipped a beat. He nodded at Rachel, who gave him a knowing look before heading off to the gala. Taking a deep breath, Nathan made his way to the Grand Hall. When he arrived, the sky above Sara Prime was a brilliant mix of colors as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the Academy's gleaming towers. Kathara stood at the entrance to the Grand Hall, dressed in her people's traditional attire, a flowing silver gown that shimmered like the stars, adorned with intricate designs that symbolized her warrior lineage. She was breathtaking, and for a moment, Nathan forgot how to speak. "Kathara," he managed, stepping forward, "you look incredible." Kathara regarded him with her usual calm expression, though there was a softness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Thank you, Nathan Cade. You look quite acceptable yourself." Nathan chuckled, nervously running a hand through his hair. "I'll take that as a compliment." Kathara glanced around, ensuring they were alone before speaking in a lower tone. "I brought you here before the gala because I needed to speak with you privately. There are complications." Nathan's brow furrowed in concern. "Complications? What's going on?" Kathara folded her hands in front of her, her gaze steady but serious. "There has been unrest among my people. Many do not approve of my relationship with you. They see it as a weakening of Thranis values, a betrayal of our traditions. Karel and others like him have been stirring dissent." Nathan's heart sank. He had known that their interactions would raise eyebrows, but he hadn't realized just how deeply it affected Kathara and her standing among her peers. "I didn't mean to cause trouble for you. If you want to dash." Kathara silenced him with a raised hand. "Nathan, I make my own decisions, and I have decided that you are worth knowing." There was a sincerity in her voice that made Nathan pause. His chest tightened, and before he could stop himself, He reached for her hand. Kathara, I don't want you to lose anything because of me. Her violet eyes met his, and for the first time, Nathan saw something in them that he had never seen before: vulnerability. I will not lose anything, she said firmly, but we must face the consequences of our connection. Tonight, at the gala, there will be those who will challenge us. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Challenge us? What do you mean? Kathara's expression hardened slightly. Karel has issued a formal combat challenge. In Thranis culture, it is a way to settle disputes of honor. He believes that by defeating me, he will demonstrate that my association with a human has weakened me. If I accept, the challenge must be fought to the end. Nathan's eyes widened. You're not seriously considering it, are you? This is insane. Kathara stepped closer, her voice low and serious. It is my duty to protect my honor and the honor of my people, but I do not fight without cause. If I accept, it is not only to defend myself, it is to prove that I stand by my decisions. Nathan's mind raced. What if? What if there's another way? Kathara tilted her head. What do you propose? Nathan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. In human culture, we don't settle everything with combat. Sometimes, we use words. Maybe we can talk to him. Show him that what we have isn't a threat to Thranis values. Maybe we can change his mind. Kathara's gaze softened as she looked at Nathan, her eyes searching his. For a moment, she said nothing, then finally, she gave a small nod. Perhaps you were right, Nathan Cade. There is more than one way to fight. That night, at the gala, tensions ran high as the gathered students watched Kathara and Nathan enter together. Karel, standing with his group of Thranis warriors, glared at them with open hostility. Nathan, his heart pounding, approached Karel alongside Kathara. He could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes on him as he stood before the towering Thranis warrior. Karel, Nathan began, his voice steady. I know you see me as an outsider, someone who doesn't belong in your world, but I'm not here to challenge your traditions. I'm here because I respect Kathara and I respect her choices. Karel's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, Kathara stepped forward. Karel, you claim that my association with Nathan has weakened me. But I tell you this, strength does not come from isolation. It comes from understanding, from connection. Nathan has shown me that humans are not to be underestimated. The room fell silent as Kathara's words hung in the air. For a long moment, Karel said nothing, his gaze shifting between Nathan and Kathara. Then, slowly, he lowered his arms. I may not agree with your choices, Kathara, Karel said, his voice grudging but respectful, but I cannot deny your strength. You have made your decision, and I will respect it. With that, Karel turned and walked away, leaving Nathan and Kathara standing in the center of the grand hall. Nathan exhaled, relief flooding through him. He turned to Kathara, who gave him a small, approving smile. You were right, she said softly. Sometimes words are the strongest weapon. Nathan grinned. Glad I could help. As the night continued and the tension in the room eased, Nathan realized that, while their journey was far from over, they had taken the first step towards something deeper. Kathara wasn't just an unattainable figure anymore, she was someone he had come to care about. And perhaps she felt the same.